What is going on, everybody? This is going to be a little bit of a TFT Set 8 PBE item guide. I think there's a lot of changes throughout all items and every facet of the game in Set 8. And I think this is going to be kind of gloss over in a lot of ways. I will be linking both the Set 7.5, the one straight above, and the Set 8, which is the one on the other side left. I'll be linking both of them in the description just so you have like access to all this stuff yourself. I imagine Mobalytics is also going to be updating it as the PBE continues, and things are going to change throughout PBE. So keep that in mind. Keep an eye out for that kind of information as well, whether it be from Mortdog, myself, or otherwise. I'll try to keep things updated. So jumping into it, attack speed in general is relatively slower. I think this is probably to combat the fact that duelists are now being added back into the game. So attack speed is kind of already present in some way, shape, or form in other units. You can kind of see that big change the best in Rageblade. Rageblade went from a 6% in 7.5 to 4% in set 8. Now, I've played a little bit of the set on PBE, and I think Rageblade on duelists themselves still feels relatively okay. But when you're using it on a non-duelist, I feel like it just doesn't ramp up nearly as quickly as it did. Obviously, 2% difference is quite a large one. And because of that, I feel like it just isn't worth it. And so that's something to kind of keep in mind and kind of look at throughout the majority of this set here, how they're going to balance the duelist portion as well as just attack speed in general. You can see with RFC, you're dropping 15% attack speed, from set 7.5 to 8. Runins is going from an 80% attack damage to 50%, which is a pretty big change in general, right? Like, that's also based on the fact, though, that you're now doing percent-based attack damage in every way, shape, and form, which we'll get into here. But yeah, generally, attack speed is going to be slower, so keep that in mind. Now, another big set here change is that Banshee's Claw, which was, I would argue, a relatively commonly built item, is no longer going to be in the game. It's being replaced by Guard Breaker, which gives you both percentage AD as well as 15 AP, and abilities and attacks do more damage to shielded units. Now, I don't really know what exactly that's kind of for, because I haven't seen many units that do shielding in general. Maybe I'm just missing them. Maybe, it's a unit that I just didn't seem to play with today. The majority of units seem to scale either AP, armor, magic resist, and or some variation of health. So we'll kind of see how this is utilized, if this is tweaked. But I think this is neat that they added this in. It would have been really, really nice last set against Guardians. Not so much from what I've seen this set. But in general, the thing I wanted to touch on is gloves no longer add any 0 dodge percentage chance. So I think previously it was 10%. Now it's just flat 20 crit chance on all glove and glove items. And so that's going to change things up quite a bit. You no longer have to worry about all of your abilities being dodged, I should say, and you hitting zeros. So that's kind of something to keep in mind. There's no dodges. There are still hero augments and such that allow for dodging, but the item itself does not allow for dodging. It also does mean that, like Lucky Thieves gloves, you get a really, really high crit potential chance on AD in general, which I think is kind of neat. I think it's 40% on your Thieves gloves now versus I think what was 20. So that's something to keep in mind. One of the big changes, though, and I think this is something that's going to be quite interesting, is Infinity Edge and Jeweled Gauntlet now are kind of the same item, but one for AD, one for AP. Previously, if you wanted to have a AP attacker or AP ability user critically strike, you'd need to have both Jeweled Gauntlet and Infinity Edge. Now, it's kind of segregated. So how I understand it is, if your unit does AP in its spell you just do Jeweled Gauntlet. If your unit does AD in its spell, you just do Infinity Edge. You do not have to place both of them. And I think, in all honesty, it's worse if you place both of them, as they literally give you the exact same amount, in a sense, right? It's 15% bonus attack damage and 15 AP, but same amount of critical strikes. Damage from an ability can critically strike. Damage from an ability can critically strike. From what I understand, though, this is AD, this is AP. This might be wrong. I might have it incorrectly, but that's what I've gathered when I tried to do a little bit of digging on it. And at least how I was able to test it today, that seems to be the case. Again, time will tell. It's also one of those things that they say the exact same thing. So, you know, it kind of is like it is in the situations. So that's always kind of neat, though, that we get rid of dodges, and I think they're trying to make it so that Jeweled Gauntlet and IE are a little bit more consistent. You know, I think that's just kind of honestly a positive in general. Consistency in general, I think, is a positive. Let's go into swords now. I think swords are a pretty big difference as well. I think the biggest thing to keep in mind with swords is that they no longer do AD, as you've seen with other units. They do percent-based AD. And so I think this will allow for scaling based on your unit's tier level a little bit more consistently, and less on the fact that certain low-cost units do really well with DB, but no high-cost units really wanted DB, right? Because the percentage of AD you were gaining from Deathblade just was, in general, less. And so you're better off going other items to compensate for that. Now I think Deathblade is going to be a much more universally usable item. But time will kind of tell. The percentage-based AD increase is kind of weird initially, as it's not as black and white in terms of what you're actually gaining. You know, whereas this is just straight up, you get 45, right? Now it's 40%, which we'll kind of see how that plans out. I think, though, Deathblade is a little bit more viable. Sorry, guys, I had to drink some water there. And now I think in general, you should see a little bit more viability with other BF-based items. That being said, we'll kind of see how this goes. Overall, I think it's a little bit of a differentiation. And now I think tiers are some of the bigger ones as well to kind of touch on. It seemed like there was quite a bit of changes to tiers in general. And so realistically, what we're looking at here, the few ones that I really want to touch on quickly, Archangels is basically inverse. So it's 20 AP starting, 10 extra every 5 seconds. Whereas Archangels used to be 10 and 20 AP every 5 seconds. So I think Archangels now is going to be a little bit less of a scaling option, but a little bit better early, right? Which I don't necessarily dislike. I think the biggest change, though, here is blue buff. So blue buff gives you 10 starting mana rather than the previous 20. It also gives you 20 AP, which I think is nice, right? It makes it so that your tier-based items are a little bit more scalable in the sense that you get more AP, I think, across the board on almost all tier items, which is nice. And it also reduces the holder's maximum mana by 10, rather than just giving you the extra bonus mana and never changing things. I don't know exactly how that also really changes things in terms of cast count. For the most part, it seems like it's the exact same, right? Because you're still getting a net 20 mana change with blue buff. It's no longer unique, so I'm thinking you could potentially place like 3 blue buffs on a unit, which is kind of interesting. Again, I didn't test that today, but that's something I'm going to be looking at in the future. As well as if you get a takedown within 3 seconds of casting after your ability, you gain 20 extra mana. So certain units will kind of steamroll that, and you'll be able to just kind of spam your abilities, which is kind of interesting. I used a blue buff on Zoe today and made it so that she only needed 1 auto attack, I think it was. Or I had 2 blue buffs, 1 augment, 1 on her, I believe it was. She had 15 mana, so it was a 1 auto attack, and she was using her ability. So she was just kind of like popping out abilities every time. And so you could theoretically do that with, I think, just double blue buff rather than, you know, doing it the other way. It's kind of interesting. It was kind of interesting in general. But neat nonetheless. Chalice now gives you less AP, but other items across the board give you more AP. So I don't mind this. Another big thing here I found is that Shojin now gives you 10 mana per attack, or every third attack, excuse me. Every third attack gives you 10 mana. So you're technically speaking at a disadvantage because what would have been 15 mana is now 10 mana every 3 attacks. But you do also then get some bonus AP from Shiv as well, meaning that Shiv can be placed on an actual damage dealing unit as well, not just your support unit to your damage dealer, which is kind of interesting. We'll kind of see how that ends up playing out. You know, at the end of the day, though, Morello had some changes as well. We had some changes to how Gargoyles works, right? Like, I would really recommend checking out both these links. I'll link the set 8 one on the left and the set 7.5 one on the right. Check them out. I think this is going to be really interesting to kind of see how they kind of go through all this as we go forward. But there's a lot of changes all throughout every item, throughout every category. How items interact, everything is definitely a lot different. And because of that, I would recommend just giving these a look over. If you have any questions, feel free to pop into my chat on Discord, in my stream, which I stream over on Twitch, flight_TV, or just in the comment section below. I'll try my best to update things. If there's any changes, I'll try to drop a comment down below about them. I'll try to tweet about it, whatever it may be, retweet things if things pop up. If this video was helpful for you, feel free to drop a like and subscribe. It helps me out a lot, helps me boost the algorithm, right? Comment on my video as well if you're trying to help me out. That's kind of that. I think it's going to be an interesting set 8 PBE. I'm excited. I played for about 7 hours today. I was giddy as a child the entire time. I still am super giddy, but I really want to get these videos out for you guys out there who will be watching them. I'm going to be also doing some other things kind of going forward. I've been kind of creating some set notes, and these may or may not really be legible to you guys. They're not meant to be really utilized, right? But I kind of want to just show, like, I'm kind of going through, trying to point out what are good carries, what traits are feeling like, etc. And I'm going to be doing individual ones throughout the set as we kind of go. I can also drop this if you guys want to see, like, my written down thoughts. I kind of follow that, I kind of don't. But, you know, use mech, what's good about mech, that kind of stuff. If you have questions on anything, like, in particular, shoot it in the chat, and that helps me out a lot, and to know, like, what you guys want to learn, what you guys want to know. That kind of stuff always helps. So as always, much love, everybody. I'm dropping this literally the night of, so expect some more content throughout the week involving set 8. I'm going to try to be pounding out videos constantly because this stuff is exciting. It's super exciting, as well as, you know, it's get on it while it's hot. So as always, hope you guys have a great rest of your day. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.